A young police officer finds herself trapped in a narrow alley, her back against the cold brick wall, trying to protect an elderly woman in a wheelchair as two violent men close in. Her radio is dead, her strength is fading. Hope feels like a memory, until fate sends help she never expected. Because just a few feet away, a man walking his German Shepherd stops mid-step. What the attackers don't realize is that the quiet stranger is a Navy SEAL home on leave. And his dog is no ordinary pet, but a trained protector forged in the fires of war. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if stories of courage and faith move your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more. The evening air over San Diego shimmered with sea mist, soft and silver, as the city held its breath for what was about to happen next. The afternoon sun in San Diego shimmered over the harbor like molten glass, bending the air into waves of gold. The scent of salt and diesel hung above the marina where gulls screamed lazily, and the city's heartbeat pulsed through the distant hum of boats and car horns. Ethan Cole, 32, moved through the crowd with the silent grace of a man who had forgotten how to belong. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his sun-browned skin marked by faint scars that peeked from beneath the sleeve of a plain gray t-shirt. His jaw was square and unshaven, his dark hair cropped close, his gray-blue eyes scanning constantly as if every passerby were a potential threat. People who met him assumed discipline. Those who looked closer saw exhaustion. Ethan had left the Navy only 6 months earlier after a rescue mission in the Persian Gulf went wrong. 2 men lost under his command. Since then, sleep had become an occasional luxury and peace a rumor he chased along the California coast. At his heel padded Atlas, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with a coat the color of warm sand fading into black along his spine. Atlas carried himself with the quiet dignity of a soldier, ears constantly twitching, eyes alert but kind. Civilians often reached out to pet him until they caught sight of his old K9 harness, its faded Navy patch still reading Guardian. Ethan had retired him, but the dog refused to retire from loyalty. Together they moved like one body divided between flesh and fur. On this day, the heat was heavy enough to slow everyone except Atlas. Ethan walked through Seaport Village, thinking only of the cool taste of iced coffee and the promise of anonymity. Then, a sharp sound sliced through the hum of summer. A woman's shout, urgent and frightened, coming from the narrow alley between 2 souvenir shops. Instinct, not thought, turned Ethan's steps. Atlas froze, ears flat, head angled toward the sound. In the alley, Maya Brooks was cornered. She was 27, a patrol officer whose face bore the trace of sunburn and sleepless nights. Her uniform clung to her lean athletic frame, and her dark brown hair, usually tied in a perfect regulation bun, was half undone, a few strands plastered against her temple by sweat. Her hazel eyes, sharp with training, were wide with fear now, not for herself, but for the trembling woman behind her. The elderly woman in the wheelchair clutched a faded floral purse to her chest. Her name was Ruth Carter, 83 years old, skin pale as paper, hair a cloud of silver. She wore a knitted lavender shawl despite the heat, her thin arms shaking. She had been on her way home from the church charity booth when 2 men had followed her, mocking her for the bills she withdrew from the ATM. One of them, Trent Davis, was gaunt, tattooed, and smelled of cheap whiskey and asphalt. His yellowed eyes darted with a manic energy that betrayed withdrawal tremors. His friend, Wyatt Briggs, broader and slower, carried a crowbar as if it were an extension of his hand. "Come on, sweetheart," Trent hissed. "Just the purse. Don't make it heroic." Maya's voice trembled, but held steady. "Back away now." Her right hand hovered near her holster, though she knew her radio had fallen into the gutter during the struggle. The narrowness of the alley gave her no room to maneuver. Her pulse thudded behind her eyes. She thought of her father, a long-retired Navy mechanic who'd once told her, "Fear's not the enemy, kid. Freezing is." Then the metallic scrape of boots behind her. She turned just enough to glimpse Ethan, a stranger built like a wall, his eyes measuring, his posture balanced. Atlas stood beside him, still as a shadow. "Step aside, officer," Ethan said softly, his tone flat, professional. "We'll handle this." "Who the hell are you?" Trent barked. The words were his last moment of control. Ethan's gaze flicked to Atlas. "Protect." The command was quiet but carved through the air like a blade. In a blur, Atlas surged forward, hitting Wyatt mid-stride. The crowbar clanged to the ground as the dog's weight drove him backward. Ethan moved before Trent could blink. A precise pivot, a strike to the wrist, and Trent's knife skittered across the asphalt. The fight was brutal and brief, all economy, no flourish. Maya caught her breath, astonished. This wasn't brawling. It was choreography written by survival itself. Ruth whimpered softly, covering her face. Within seconds, both attackers were disarmed and gasping against the wall. Atlas stood over them, chest heaving, fangs bared but silent, awaiting his next cue. Ethan crouched, securing the dropped knife. His voice was calm when he spoke to Maya. "They'll live. Call it in." The authority in his tone stung her pride for a heartbeat before gratitude drowned it. "You could have been killed," she said, breathless. "So could you," he replied. His eyes softened for the first time, studying her, the stubborn set of her jaw, the tremor in her hand she tried to hide. "You did fine." Sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan gave a short whistle. Atlas's body relaxed instantly, ears forward again, tail still. Ruth reached out a trembling hand toward the dog. You're an angel," she whispered. Ethan's lips twitched in something almost like a smile. "Just a man with a dog, ma'am." When the backup cars arrived, Maya turned to thank him, but he was already gone, swallowed by the crowd along the sunlit promenade, Atlas's silhouette gliding beside him like a shadow that refused to fade. Yet, for the first time in months, Ethan's chest felt lighter, his purpose less lost. Somewhere behind him, an officer and an old woman were safe. The city still smelled of salt and danger, but now it also smelled faintly, almost impossibly, like peace. Morning came slow to San Diego, the kind of light that painted the ocean in soft silver before the heat rose to burn it gold. Maya Brooks hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the alley again. The flash of the knife, the blur of fur, the man's calm voice slicing through the chaos. She had filed her report by sunrise, but the paper didn't capture the tremor that still lingered in her hands. The department treated her like a hero. Her partner, Tom Reeves, a burly man in his 40s with close-cropped blonde hair and a perpetual smirk, clapped her on the back when she walked in. "You pulled through, Brooks. Word is, some good Samaritan did the heavy lifting." He said it with affection, but also with the skepticism of a man who believed coincidence was a myth. "You get his name?" She shook her head. "Just a man with a dog." Tom grunted. Figures. He was the type who trusted procedure, not ghosts with perfect timing. Years ago, a failed backup had cost him a rookie partner, and since then, he treated luck like a loaded gun, never to be handled twice. By late morning, Maya was at Harbor Bean Cafe, a quiet corner place smelling of roasted espresso and ocean salt. She sat by the window, uniform shirt unbuttoned at the collar, badge gleaming dully. The world outside bustled, ordinary, and that normalcy unnerved her. Every siren in the distance made her tense. She tried to focus on the chatter of students, the hiss of the steamer wand, the comforting clink of mugs, but peace was slippery. Then the bell over the door chimed, and her heart skipped once, hard. Ethan Cole entered like someone built from quiet decisions. Jeans, dark t-shirt, the same steady posture that said control was his only armor. At his side, Atlas padded in, wearing a service vest so worn the stitching looked like battle scars. The dog's coat glowed bronze under the cafe lights, and his eyes scanned the room before he settled beside his human with silent approval. Maya watched them from her seat, torn between curiosity and the irrational comfort their presence brought. She had half expected to never see him again. Ethan ordered black coffee from Rita Morales, the barista, a middle-aged woman with olive skin, gray streaks in her curly hair, and the no-nonsense warmth of someone who'd mothered half the block. Rita smiled at Atlas, murmured something in Spanish that made the dog tilt his head. Ethan paid in cash, left a generous tip, and turned. Their eyes met. For a second, the air between them held the memory of sirens and rain. He approached her table with hesitation, as if unsure whether he belonged in her daylight world. "Officer Brooks," he greeted, voice low, even. "I figured I owed you an apology. I vanished before backup arrived." Maya gestured to the seat across from her. "You disappeared like smoke, Mr. Cole. I was beginning to think I imagined you." He sat, movements deliberate. "You didn't. I just prefer quiet. Exits." Silence lingered, filled by the hum of the espresso machine. Maya studied him more closely now. The fine lines near his eyes spoke of too many dawns without rest. His knuckles bore tiny scars, the kind no paperwork could explain. "You military?" she asked. He hesitated a fraction too long before replying, "Was." That one word carried the weight of something left behind. Rita brought his drink and, without asking, set down a small bowl of water for Atlas. "That one's a gentleman," she said, nodding at the dog. "You two watch each other's souls, I can tell." Then she disappeared back behind the counter. Maya smiled faintly. "She's right. He's different." Ethan looked down at the dog, a subtle warmth softening his features. "He's what's left." "Left of what?" she asked before she could stop herself. He met her gaze, and she saw something raw flicker there, grief shaped into discipline. "Left of who I used to be." Neither spoke for a while. The cafe filled with the soft murmur of morning life. Tourists, locals, a child laughing near the window. For the first time since the alley, Maya felt the tremor in her hands fade. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "You don't need to apologize for leaving." He took a sip of his coffee, eyes fixed on the harbor outside. "You would have done the same." "Maybe," she admitted, "but I wouldn't have been that fast." He smiled, barely, but it reached his eyes this time. Training's funny that way. It sticks even when it shouldn't. When she laughed, it was soft, the kind that felt like a release valve. The sound seemed to startle him. Atlas's tail thumped once against the floor. "You ever think," she said, "that maybe some people were trained not to save the world, but just small pieces of it?" Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. "All the time." They talked until the shadows on the wall shifted from noon to amber. She learned small things. He lived in a rented apartment near Pacific Beach. He fixed old boats for therapy. He hated crowds but loved thunderstorms. He learned she'd joined the force to rebuild trust in her neighborhood, that she still visited her father every Sunday for dinner, and that she hated wearing her hair up, but regulations demanded it. When Ethan finally rose to leave, the sun had dipped low enough to set the cafe glass aglow. He placed a folded bill under his cup and nodded once. "Stay safe, Officer Brooks." She looked up, half smiling. "You too, Mr. Cole." Atlas stood, stretching. As Ethan turned to go, Maya called after him. "Hey, what do you call that move with your dog? The one from yesterday?" He paused, hand on the door. "Trust," he said simply, and left. Outside, the air was golden and thick with the scent of salt and roasted beans. Maya watched them until they disappeared into the crowd. One man, one dog, walking in rhythm, their silhouettes framed by the blaze of summer. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. The sun hung low over San Diego's skyline, burning the glass towers into molten gold. Evening carried the weight of the day, thick shimmering air and the hum of a city pretending not to ache. Ethan Cole parked his old navy blue pickup outside a small repair shop near Mission Bay, the scent of motor oil and sea breeze clinging to the air. The shop belonged to Raymond Ray Harker, a wiry man in his late 50s with tanned, weather-cracked skin and hands as rough as rope. His salt and pepper hair was pulled into a short ponytail, his beard trimmed close to a sharp jawline. Ray had once served beside Ethan in the Navy, years before a back injury ended his career. These days, he fixed boats for a living and carried the calm bitterness of a man who'd seen too much and laughed too little. "You're late," Ray said. His gravel voice softened by the sound of a blues record spinning somewhere in the shop. "Your timing's gone to hell since you left the teams." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Civilian life doesn't come with a clock, remember?" Ray snorted. "Neither does guilt, apparently." They didn't talk about the mission, that mission, but both knew its ghost stood between them every time they met. Atlas hopped out of the truck, tail steady, eyes bright. The German shepherd moved around the shop, inspecting every corner before settling near the door. "Dog's got more discipline than half the Navy did," Ray muttered, handing Ethan a wrench. "What are you really here for?" Ethan leaned against a half-repaired motorboat, wiping sweat from his forehead. "A cop, Maya Brooks. She's good, sharp. Got caught up in something nasty last week." Ray arched an eyebrow. "You saving cops now?" Ethan ignored the jab. "She's being watched. The men from the alley, one's still out there." Ray's expression hardened. "You sure?" Atlas caught the scent near her precinct. Same oil and cigarette stench as the guy from that night. Ray frowned. "You could tell from a smell?" "He could," Ethan said, nodding toward the dog. Ray sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You're playing protector again. That's not a healthy hobby." Ethan's voice dropped. I made a promise. He didn't mention to whom, maybe the old woman, maybe the fallen teammates, maybe just himself. Ray didn't press. He'd seen that look before, the kind of quiet vow only soldiers made when they knew no one else would understand. That night, Maya's apartment in Ocean Beach felt smaller than usual. The sound of waves crashing beyond the window should have been soothing, but the rhythmic noise only reminded her of her own heartbeat. Uneven, restless. She'd been staring at her report for an hour without writing a word. The clock ticked 10:43 when she heard it, a faint rustle from the hallway outside her door. She stood instantly, hand hovering near her sidearm. Atlas's silhouette flashed in her mind. Calm and unyielding. She exhaled slowly, forced herself to listen. Silence. Maybe her nerves were fraying. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Don't stay up late, officer." The words froze her blood. She scanned the shadows. Through the peephole, the hallway lay empty, lit by a flickering bulb. Her stomach turned. Whoever it was, they were close enough to know she was awake. Unable to stay inside, she grabbed her jacket and keys and drove to the pier where she knew Ethan sometimes worked. The road shimmered with leftover heat. When she arrived, the dock lights cast long silver lines across the water. Ethan was there, crouched beside Atlas, adjusting a length of rope on the hull of a small fishing boat. He looked up, eyes narrowing at her sudden appearance. "Something happen?" he asked, standing. Maya hesitated, then handed him her phone. "Whoever sent that knows where I live." Ethan read the message, jaw tightening. His voice stayed low but sharp. "He's escalating, testing boundaries." He glanced at Atlas, who had risen to attention, ears forward, body tense. "We'll find him." Maya folded her arms, defensive. "We? I'm a cop. I can handle a threat." "You're also human," Ethan said. "There's a difference between courage and suicide." His tone wasn't patronizing. It was weary, almost pleading. She recognized it, the voice of someone who'd lost people before and refused to do it again. The wind off the bay picked up, tossing strands of her dark hair across her face. She pushed them back, studying him. In the golden reflection of the docklight, Ethan looked different, softer, almost vulnerable beneath the lines of control etched into his face. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "You don't even know me." He met her eyes. "I know what it looks like when someone's fighting alone." For a moment, neither spoke. Atlas moved between them, pressing his head gently against Maya's leg as if to steady her. The gesture cracked something in her chest, a mix of fear, gratitude, and the dizzying realization that she trusted this man and his dog more than she trusted most of her department. Footsteps echoed faintly from the far end of the dock. Ethan's head turned immediately, motion sharp. A figure lingered near the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a hooded sweatshirt. The stranger hesitated when Ethan straightened. "Stay here," Ethan murmured. He moved like water, quiet, efficient, controlled. But when the man saw him coming, he bolted, disappearing into the night. Ethan stopped at the edge of the pier, listening. Only the slap of water remained. Maya joined him, breath shallow. "You think it's him?" Ethan's voice was grim. "I think he wants you to believe he's closer than he is. Fear's part of the hunt." Atlas gave a low growl, staring into the darkness. Ethan laid a hand on his neck, grounding the animal and himself. "Go home," he told Maya. "Lock your doors. I'll check the area." "You'll check it?" she repeated. "You're not a cop." "No," he said. "Just someone who is tired of watching good people get hurt." When she finally drove away, the sky had turned violet, and Ethan stood on the pier, the wind tugging at his shirt. Atlas sat beside him, gaze locked on the city lights. The past had followed him home, wearing a new face, and this time it had chosen a different target. Ethan wasn't sure if what he felt for Maya was duty, empathy, or something dangerously close to hope, but he knew he wasn't walking away. Not again. The next morning arrived smothered in fog, a soft gray blanket that swallowed the San Diego skyline. The ocean sounded closer, louder somehow, its rhythm echoing through the narrow streets of Ocean Beach. Maya Brooks woke from a shallow sleep, the threatening message still glowing on her phone screen. She had spent the night checking locks and listening to the creak of the floorboards. Fear was a weight that sat between her ribs now, heavy but oddly steadying. It reminded her she was still alive. Her uniform hung over a chair, crisp and ready, though she wasn't. The woman in the mirror looked both fragile and unyielding, her hazel eyes shadowed but fierce. She had grown up fast after her mother left when Maya was 12. raised by a Navy father who taught her discipline, not comfort. She'd built her life around protecting others, but lately she wasn't sure who would protect her. She arrived at the precinct before sunrise. The bullpen glowed with sterile fluorescent light and smelled faintly of coffee and tension. Lieutenant Karen Doyle, her superior, was already there, mid-40s, tall, with auburn hair pulled tight into a bun that looked sharp enough to cut glass. Doyle's posture was impeccable, her movements efficient, her reputation built on command and control. She had once worked undercover in narcotics, an assignment that left her with scars along her right wrist and a temper that rarely slept. "Brooks," Doyle said, looking up from a file. "You're early. You look like hell." Maya managed a grim smile. "Rough night." Doyle studied her face for a moment, something almost maternal flickering before it vanished. "I read your report. About the man who helped you. Cole, right? You trust him?" Maya hesitated. "Yes, he's capable. Ex-military." Doyle's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you didn't think to run his background?" Maya swallowed. "He saved my life, ma'am." "People save lives for all kinds of reasons," Doyle said quietly, turning back to her paperwork. "Just make sure his isn't one you regret." Later that morning, Maya drove to Mission Bay to meet Ethan as promised. The sun had burned through the fog, lighting the marina in pale gold. Ethan was already there, crouched beside Atlas, checking the dog's vest straps. He looked like he hadn't slept either, though his exhaustion wore a soldier's mask, controlled, contained, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. "You shouldn't be out alone," he said when she approached. "And you shouldn't act like you're my bodyguard," she replied, crossing her arms. The faintest smile tugged at his mouth. "Maybe I just like the view." The flirtation was unexpected, clumsy, but it cracked the tension. For a moment, they were just two people under the sun, not a cop and a haunted veteran chasing ghosts. Before she could respond, a voice called from behind, "Well, if it isn't the stray soldier and the stubborn Mien cop." It was Detective Paul Hanlon, a new transfer from another precinct. He was in his early 30s, clean-shaven, tall and lean, with pale gray eyes that missed little. His shirt was always pressed too neatly, his tie knotted like precision itself. Hanlon was the kind of man who thrived on logic, a mind sharpened by skepticism. But beneath that order lay something brittle. His younger brother, also a cop, had died in a traffic stop gone wrong 2 years earlier. Since then, Hanlon trusted instinct more than luck. "Lieutenant Doyle asked me to check on you," he said to Maya, his tone polite but wary as his eyes drifted toward Ethan. "Didn't realize we were involving civilians now." Ethan didn't flinch. "Civilians tend to get involved when bullets start flying." Hanlon smirked. "Right. I read about your little alley show. Impressive choreography." The air tightened. Atlas gave a low rumble, not aggressive but unmistakably protective. Maya stepped between them. "Enough. We're on the same side." They moved to the edge of the dock, discussing the message Maya had received. Ethan replayed every detail in his mind. The timing, the words, the tone. "He's methodical," Ethan said. "He wants her unsettled before he strikes. That means he is watching, nearby, testing her reaction." Hanlon frowned. "So, what, we set a trap?" Ethan shook his head. "We don't corner predators, they corner themselves. We just have to make him think he's winning." Maya exhaled, uneasy. "You're talking like this is a mission." "It is," Ethan said simply. "Whether you like it or not." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the marina office. A young woman had collapsed by the docks, clutching a bleeding arm. Maya rushed over first, instincts kicking in. The woman, maybe 25, had sunburned skin and messy blonde hair tied in a loose braid. Her name tag read Lila Grant, a dockhand who managed boat rentals. He tried to grab me," she gasped. "Tall guy, hoodie, said he was looking for someone named Brooks." Maya's stomach dropped. Ethan's eyes hardened instantly. "He's escalating," he muttered. Hanlon called it in, voice clipped, all business. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and the young woman was stabilized. Maya crouched beside her as the gurney rolled forward. "Did he say anything else?" Lila blinked through pain. "Just that you shouldn't hide behind men with dogs." When the ambulance left, the silence that followed felt heavier than the heat. Maya turned to Ethan, voice trembling but steady. "He's not just threatening me anymore." Ethan looked out over the bay, the water blinding in the sun. "Then he's given us what we needed, a reason to end it." He reached for Atlas's collar, the old reflex returning to his stance. Maya realized then that Ethan wasn't going to wait for backup or warrants. He was already planning a hunt, and though every rule in her head screamed against it, part of her, deep, instinctive, was ready to follow. That night, the fog returned thicker than before, swallowing the city once more. Somewhere beneath it, two people stood on the edge of something neither could name: revenge, redemption, or the dangerous beginning of love. By nightfall, San Diego no longer felt like summer. The fog had thickened into a strange kind of rain, not heavy, but persistent, as if the sky had forgotten how to stop weeping. The pier lights bled into the mist, and the sound of the waves striking against the wooden posts echoed like a warning no one wanted to hear. Ethan Cole stood on the edge of the dock, his clothes damp, his expression unreadable. Atlas lay at his feet, ears flicking to the rhythm of the sea. The dog had become restless lately. He could sense the tension rippling through his handler, the way Ethan's breathing quickened each time he glanced toward the darker end of the harbor. Atlas wasn't just a companion, he was a mirror to Ethan's storm. From behind came the soft crunch of boots on wet planks. Maya Brooks approached, jacket pulled tight around her uniform, her hair damp from the drizzle. Her face was paler than usual, but her eyes were alive with a strange mix of fear and defiance. "You didn't answer your phone," she said. Ethan didn't turn immediately. "I was listening." "To what?" "To the quiet before things break." He finally faced her, and for the first time, she noticed how tired he looked, like a man who had been running from ghosts too long. Maya exhaled sharply. "Hanlon's furious. He says you're contaminating an investigation." Ethan smirked faintly. "He's not wrong." She crossed her arms. "You're enjoying this." "No," he said softly. "I'm just better when I have an enemy." Before Maya could respond, a figure emerged from the fog. Officer Dana Kessler, a young patrol cop with freckles and nervous energy, hurried toward them. She was barely 25, with auburn hair tucked into a ponytail and an earnestness that made her both endearing and fragile. She held out a sealed folder. "Lieutenant Doyle sent this for you, Brooks. They pulled security footage from the marina after the attack on that dock worker." Maya opened the folder under the glow of a dock lamp. Inside were a few blurry stills. A tall man in a hoodie, face obscured, watching the pier from behind a line of fishing boats. But there was something else, a van, parked 2 blocks away, partially visible in multiple frames. A partial plate number was legible. Ethan leaned closer. "That's not random. He's casing routes, not victims." Kessler frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan pointed to the direction of the van. "Predators like him don't just stalk, they study. Every move's a rehearsal for something bigger." Maya looked up sharply. "You think he's planning another attack?" "I think," Ethan said, "he's daring us to stop him." Back at the precinct, Detective Paul Hanlon was pacing when they arrived. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the faded tattoo of an anchor on his forearm, an old mark of brotherhood he rarely showed. The storm outside drummed against the glass as he spoke. "The van's registered to a rental service near Logan Heights. Cash payment, fake ID, no fingerprints, but..." He flipped open a folder, revealing a mugshot. "Meet Calvin Mott, 43, former longshoreman, arrested twice for assault, once for stalking a female officer in Arizona, released last year on good behavior." Ethan studied the photo, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks, pitted skin, and deep-set eyes that gleamed with the kind of intelligence that bordered on mania. The lines in his face were carved by sun and hate, his unshaven jaw peppered with gray. Hanlon continued. "He fits the height and build. His last known address, a derelict boathouse down near Shelter Island." Maya's voice was steady but cold. "Let's go." Doyle's voice, calm yet firm, came through the radio. "Negative, Brooks. That's not an active warrant site. We need confirmation before moving in." Maya glanced at Ethan, then at Atlas, who had already risen to his feet, muscles tense. "Sometimes waiting gets people killed," she said quietly. Hanlon sighed, rubbing his temple. "You two are going to be the death of my career." An hour later, the three of them, Maya, Ethan, and Hanlon, stood outside the boathouse. Rain slicked the ground into dark glass. The structure loomed ahead, its paint peeling, windows black. A single light flickered inside, barely visible through warped glass. Ethan moved first, signaling Atlas with a subtle gesture. The dog slinked forward, low and silent, nose twitching. Then, without warning, a loud bang shattered the quiet. The light inside went out. Hanlon drew his gun. "Move!" They breached the door in one fluid motion, Ethan leading, Maya at his flank, Hanlon covering the rear. The inside smelled of rust and salt, the air thick with mold. A cot, an open duffel, old photographs pinned to the wall, and on the table, a small cheap phone still glowing. On its cracked screen was a single text message unsent. "You shouldn't have brought him." "Damn it," Hanlon muttered. "He knew we'd come." Ethan scanned the walls, dozens of photos, grainy surveillance shots of Maya leaving her apartment, walking Atlas, standing in uniform by her cruiser. He saw something else, a newer photo, just taken. Ethan himself, at the pier, from behind. The realization hit cold. They weren't hunting the predator alone, he was hunting both of them. A sudden crash behind them, a window shattering. Atlas spun, barking sharply, then lunged toward the noise. By the time they reached the opening, the night was empty except for the echo of footsteps fading into rain. Maya stood frozen, staring at the table, her reflection fractured in the phone's screen. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "This isn't over," he said. "He's close, and now he's angry." When they stepped back outside, the fog swallowed the boathouse completely. The world had become smaller, quieter, as if the storm itself were holding its breath. Somewhere beyond the pier, a man waited in the darkness, smiling. In every storm there hides a lesson, and in every scar, a spark of grace. Ethan, Maya, and Atlas's journey reminds us that miracles rarely arrive in lightning. They come in quiet moments of courage, in the loyalty of a companion, in the faith that whispers, "You are not alone." What saved them was not strength alone, but something far gentler, belief. Belief that even when the darkness closes in, there is a light that cannot be extinguished. Perhaps that light is what we call a miracle. Perhaps it is God, walking unseen beside us, working through the hands of strangers and the hearts of those who refuse to give up. When life corners you, when fear whispers that hope is gone, remember, so long as love still moves in your heart, heaven has not turned its face away. If this story touched your soul, share it with someone who might need a reminder that good still walks among us. Leave a comment about what moment spoke to you most, and subscribe to join us as we continue telling stories of courage, redemption, and the bond between people and the divine spark within them. May God bless you and your loved ones tonight. May He keep you safe in every storm and guide you toward your own miracle. Amen.